North to south, coast to coast, and around the world. This is the Wells Report. Good morning. I'm John David Wells. Today is Wednesday, August 9th, year of our Lord 2023. Welcome to the broadcast. Good to have you here. Thank you for joining us. What do? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We then make commentary, which is not news. Commentary is only opinion, yours and mine. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Personal note, we are broadcasting live for the first time on Rumble. If you are watching on Rumble, please do me a favor. Please do join our chat room. You can find that theoretically. I'm not exactly sure here. This is the first time we're doing this. And so what we have is we have an opportunity for you to join us on Rumble for the first time as we do this live broadcast every day between 9 and 11 a.m., Monday through Friday, on this very fine platform called Rumble. We're also on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon, so you can join us there as well. Again, welcome to the Wells Report. Time now for the Wells Report front page. This brings us to national news. Ohio voters rejected a measure to require a 60% threshold for constitutional amendments. This from USA Today. Ohio called it Issue 1. It failed last night. This, according to Decision Desk HQ, it dealt a blow to Ohio Republicans who wanted to hamstring a November ballot question on abortion rights. Decision Desk HQ is an election results reporting agency. They provide results and race calls for the USA Today network. They called the race at about 8:09 last night with 28% of the vote counted. No vote was leading 68 to 32%. It was an overwhelming victory for those trying to turn aside that particular ballot question. Last night's election was the culmination of a month-long fight that began last year, when Secretary of State Frank LaRose and State Representative Brian Stewart first introduced a plan to tighten rules for constitutional amendments. The debate played out in the halls of the Ohio State House, on the campaign trail, and even in the courtroom as opponents tried to stop GOP lawmakers from passing that particular law. The Supreme Court of the United States, this according to AP News, has reinstated the ghost gun ban. It's a regulation aimed at reining in the proliferation of what are called ghost guns. Those are firearms without serial numbers that have been turning up at crime scenes across the nation in increasing numbers. The court on yesterday, voted 5-4 to put a hold on the ruling from a federal judge in Texas that invalidated the Biden administration's regulation of ghost gun kits. The regulation will be in effect while the administration appeals the ruling to the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans and potentially again to the Supreme Court. Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Amy Coney Barrett joined with the court's 3 liberal members to form the majority. Justices Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Clarence Thomas would have kept the regulation on hold during the appeals process. Neither side provided an explanation. President Biden designated the Grand Canyon as a national monument. He is dedicating nearly 1 million acres of land near the Grand Canyon as a new national monument. He did this yesterday to protect the area from uranium mining, this according to administration officials. Mr. Biden's visit to Arizona is part of a nationwide blitz by the by the White House, to translate key policy victories to voters, including a law he signed last year to inject $370 billion in tax incentives into wind, solar, and other renewable energy sources. This as the 2024 campaign ramps up. Senior cabinet officials are also touring the country this week, highlighting the domestic agenda. This is the New York Times article that says during the first stop of a 3-state tour, Mr. Biden will announce that he's creating a national monument, the 5th such designation of his presidency, in an area sacred to Native American tribes. This also according to American administration officials. The mining is off limits for future development in that area, said Ali Zaidi, Mr. Biden's national climate advisor, telling reporters on Air Force One it's focused on preserving historic resources in the area. Elsewhere in the financial world, U.S. regulators fined 9 Wall Street companies, including Wells Fargo, BNP Paribas, and Societe Generale. $549 million over an employee's use of personal messaging apps to discuss deals, trade, and other businesses. This from Reuters. The penalties mark the latest wave in a sweeping 2-year enforcement probe targeting Wall Street's use of so-called off-channel work communications, such as WhatsApp messaging, and breaches of rules that require firms to retain certain work-related communications. All 9 firms admitted that from at least 2019, their employees often communicated on personal devices using iMessage, WhatsApp, and Signal, according to the SEC, in what regulators said was a pervasive and long-standing violation of record-keeping rules. Spokespeople for Wells Fargo, which agreed to pay $200 million in penalties to the SEC and CFTC, and the Bank of Montreal, which agreed to pay $60 million, said the firms are pleased to have resolved the matter. Spokespeople for other companies either declined to comment or did not respond to requests for comment. This was disturbing. The California Biolab that was run in a derelict warehouse with a garden hose leading to it received U.S. funding. This from the London Daily Mail. A Chinese-backed biolab in California was awarded over $500,000 million in U.S. taxpayer cash, this according to records. The black market lab, which was raided earlier this year, was found to be making illegal COVID and pregnancy tests and storing disease-riddled mice and hundreds of samples of pathogens, blood, and other dubious chemicals. Public records showed the company linked to the lab received nearly $150,000 from U.S. government under a COVID-era loan program, receiving 2 separate loans of $74,912 in April, and then in February of 2021, received that same amount again. Universal Meditech was also awarded a massive $360,000 tax credit in 2018 through California Governor Gavin Newsom's Cal Competes program, though UMI's inability to meet program guidelines meant it actually never received those funds. The company, which was based in Fresno, California, went bust in 2022 and was taken over by its main creditor, a company with Chinese ownership, who moved the operations into an unassuming warehouse in a sleepy town slightly south of Fresno called Reedley. In beer news, the heir to the Anheuser-Busch fortune made a stunning decision on the company's controversial ad campaign with transgender activist Dylan Mulvaney, saying the decision was a huge mistake as sales continue to suffer for the company. Bush joined Sean Hannity to discuss his take on the controversy and why he believes the ad would have had his ancestors rolling over in their graves. Quote, "They're paying the price, and I think the company greatly miscalculated what they thought was being inclusive, but was really quite divisive," said Bush. "I think my family they lived by the motto, making friends is our business, and they believe that bringing people together, making it a sociable, fun, beer drinking experience was the way to go. I think my family, my ancestors would have rolled over in their graves. They were very patriotic. They loved this country and what it stood for. They believe that transgender, gays, that sort of thing was all a very personal issue." By the way, while we're discussing beer, Anheuser-Busch is now selling 8 of its beloved brands as Bud Light continues to plague its earnings. This from The Street. Following the layoffs of hundreds of management personnel, Anheuser-Busch is now selling several of its brands to a Canadian company. The brands will go to Tilray. This according to Get Free Report, its Canadian consumer goods company, publicly traded on NASDAQ, which owns several cannabis and craft brew companies under its brand. According to earlier reports, Anheuser-Busch will sell the following brands to Tilray: Shock Top, Breckenridge Brewery, Blue Point Brewing Company, 10 Barrel Brewing Company, Red Hook Brewery, Widmer Brothers Brewery, and Square Mile Cider Company, along with Highball Energy. A Florida school district has sent a memo to trans students and employees getting news. This is from Newsmax. Transgender employees cannot use the pronouns or bathrooms that match their gender identity due to a Florida law that was recently passed. The state's Orange County Public Schools announced in a memo it sent out this week, according to The Hill. The memo, which illustrates the manifold controversial changes the state's legislature has made to its education system, states that under the law, House Bill 1069, no one is permitted to be required to use a person's preferred pronoun title or pronoun, and students are not to be asked for the pronouns they prefer. Orange County Public Schools, which is one of the largest school districts in Florida, said in the memo, the bill states that a transgender employee or contractor may not provide a personal title or pronoun to students which does not correspond to the employee's or contractor's biological sex at birth. Also, this is from CNN. Tampa Mayor Jane Castor made a big catch while fishing in the Florida Keys with her family late last month, spotting and hauling in a package containing 70 pounds of cocaine. This with an estimated street value of approximately $1.1 million, according to the mayor's office. The package was discovered south of Marathon on July 23rd, according to the U.S. Border Patrol. Castor saved the location of the find on her watch as the family hauled the package out of the water into their recreational boat and contacted the Monroe County Sheriff's Office to report the drugs, according to her office. Border Patrol agents with the Miami sector then took custody of the drugs, according to the border agency and the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. And finally, an Italian cheesemaker died. This happened on Sunday after being crushed by thousands of rounds of Grana Padano cheese in the aging room of its factory in Bergamo, northern Italy. Giacomo Chiapparini, 74 years old, entered the aging room to check the automatic robot used to clean the cheese rounds during the aging process. At the time of his death, there were 10 corridors of floor-to-ceiling shelves with approximately 1,600 rounds per corridor. It's unclear what caused the initial collapse, but authorities described it as a domino effect, leading to the cheesemaker's demise. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us today. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. Again, welcome to the live watchers and consumers of the Wells Report on Rumble. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA. The only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship.
Call 877-655-6870. That's 877-655-6870. 877-655-6870.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now, you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.
And good morning. Welcome to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. We do that. Thanks very much for joining us. Mike Renwee has checked in, and we hope that you do as well. We do indeed report the news honestly and fairly. And we do so and make commentary. And that commentary is not news. So if you happen to be new to the broadcast, then what you have is you have news reporting, analysis, where we point out fact and bias in the news because we try to de-propagandize news, and then we make commentary, and that's not news. That's just opinion, and I carefully differentiate between those things. So if you, by the way, have any kind of comment on anything that I say or any news that you happen to hear, all you got to do is join us on the telephone. I prefer that. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. It's right there on what we call the lower third. It's right down there. 817-379-2172. So once again, feel free to join us, and that can get you here from anywhere. You lost again. Unless, of course, you happen to live in Florida and you happen to shop at Publix supermarkets. The Mega Millions jackpot was $1.58 billion. And by the way, that person bought the ticket at a Publix supermarket in Florida, matched all 6 numbers for the game's largest ever jackpot. It wasn't by much, but that was an awful lot of winners here. Let's give you a report on the scene here as we bring this to you. Let's bring this report and let me. Hang on just a moment. Stand by. Oh, this is so annoying. So annoying from time to time. Okay, and this is good. Yeah, this is really good here. Hold on just a second. Yeah, we've got this small little issue here that's happening, and I'm trying to work it out as we do this, and I think I finally got it down, and here is the report. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for it as we move through this segment.
One winning ticket matched all 6 numbers in last night's $1.58 billion Mega Millions lottery jackpot, and it was sold right here in Florida. The Florida Lottery says the winning ticket was purchased at a Publix in Neptune Beach. Now, even if you didn't win the jackpot, you still want to check your tickets this morning. One ticket matched the 5 white numbers, and that one is worth $2 million. Here are the winning numbers: 13, 19, 20, 32, 33, and 14 as the Mega Ball. Another 8 tickets are worth $10,000. They matched 4 numbers and the Mega Ball.
All right. And so once again, as I said, unfortunately, you lost again. Now, most of the time, what ends up happening is the people go out and they buy their mega tickets and they have this moment of dreaming. Everybody does. That's actually what you're paying for. It's not an overly expensive ticket. But when you buy that ticket, you sit there and you look at this and you go, you know, somebody's got to win this. Wouldn't it be cool if I did? And you start thinking about all the things that you would do with the money, you know, thinking of whatever it is that you have always wanted to do. What I would do is immediately take the cash option. You pay all your taxes up front and you take the cash option, which, by the way, as it turns out, is about half. It's somewhere around $758 million if somebody decides to choose the cash option. But that's a pretty good amount of money. I mean, you know, you start throwing $758 million around and pretty soon you're talking about real cash. Yeah. And but you think about it, and that's what you're paying for. It's a fun little thing, a fun little muse. And that doesn't mean that I don't have extreme wishes for you to be able to indeed enjoy that winning moment when you suddenly realize, wait a minute, are those the right numbers? Can you imagine what that would be like? Can you imagine paying off your house, taking care of your kids? Oh, it'd be awesome. This is the Wells Report. John David Wells at your service. We're going to be back with just a couple of minutes. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with more news as we continue on Wednesday.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship.
Call 877-655-6870. That's 877-655-6870. 877-655-6870.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now, you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. We are waiting for our first chat or our first phone call from Rumble. For the first time today, we are broadcasting the Wells Report live on Rumble. And if you happen to be running across us for the first time, welcome. It's good to have you here. Thank you very much for being a part of our broadcast. There was a big election in Ohio yesterday. It had to do with a ballot initiative that would amend the state constitution so that if indeed there was an amendment that was provided on a ballot for the people to vote, the people in Ohio to vote for, they would have to pass that ballot initiative to amend the Constitution with a 60% vote as opposed to a simple majority, which is 50% plus one vote. Voters overwhelmingly rejected the state issue by a large margin, meaning the threshold for future ballot measures to pass will remain at 50% rather than 60%. That's not exactly correct. We point out fact and bias on in news articles, and in this particular case, it wouldn't be future ballot measures. It would be future ballot measures to amend the Ohio Constitution. A rare miss by Fox News on that one. The race, by the way, was called by Associated Press. The failure of the initiative to pass also means the path for another ballot measure on whether to codify what is called a right to an abortion into the state constitution may have an easier time passing. The issue prompted a massive early voter turnout, one that had some election offices straining to manage the load. As of last Wednesday, more than 533,000 people had voted by mail or in person since the early voting began on July 11th. This according to data collected by the Associated Press. That nearly doubled the final early voting figures for Ohio's two previous midterm primary elections, which included races for governor and Congress. Democrat opponents of the measure made the argument that the initiative would take away power from the voters and give it to politicians. They also focused their opposition largely on the abortion issue. And that's what bothers me the most on this. What bothers me the most on this is not so much the issue itself. That is a moral issue that is best left to the privacy of one's thoughts. And of course, the private vote that you are allowed to make in a secret ballot format, which is what we follow here in the United States. That's up to you. But what bothers me on this is the interference from outside agencies that are making a local topic, a local ballot initiative, a national issue. And that's what happened here. Now, there are a lot of lessons to be learned here, but the most important one, at least as far as I'm concerned, is the dark money issue that is visited on states to promote one idea or another. And dark money is not focused solely on the left, although leftist political dark money sources are very, very good at using dark money, better than, say, for example, a conservative group with the same ideas. The dark money issue is the problem, because what ends up happening is that you've got all of this cash that comes in from everywhere to try to sway public minds. Now, it's not election interference. It's campaigning, and that's okay. And the people of Ohio get to vote as they see fit. If they want that particular amendment in their constitution, that's up to them. But what's not up to them is this idea that someone like, for want of a better example, George Soros would reach into, say, for example, a county or a city or a state and throw a whole bunch of money at a prosecutor that he believes would indeed be the right prosecutor for that particular city. Austin, Texas has a DA that was elected through Soros dark money, and the city has changed. It has changed dramatically. And this is something that needs to stop. Well, okay, John David, you're fond of saying there are solutions to your concerns. There are solutions to my concerns. And here's one. What I believe is that any given state should deal with money sources from that given state. In other words, in order for dark money to flow into the state through various political sources, that would be illegal. In other words, only Ohio sources of money, in this case, could be used to campaign. And that, of course, would be another issue for the state. Now, that's not really something that is probably going to pass, because this dark money does nourish the state financially when it comes from all sources. I mean, that money is spent in the state in which these dark money sources are trying to sway an election. And so how do you do this? But then again, when it comes to campaign financing, I disagree with the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court that said somehow a multi-billion or multi-trillion dollar corporation is actually a person that has free speech rights, et cetera, and can thus contribute to campaigns. I vehemently disagree with that. While I believe that people should be able to contribute, I don't believe that corporations are people. I believe that only human beings, and facing a particular limit to the amount of money they can donate, should donate. Mark Zuckerberg of Meta famously threw $450 million into campaigning for the 2020 election. That's too much. That is just too much. How much should it be? I don't know. I don't have any idea, but only human beings should contribute to politics in the United States. That's what I believe. And in state issues, that money should be contributed by state voters or state citizens. Now, I realize that may not necessarily be something that will ever see the light of day. Well, one of the points that I have to make in this is indeed the fact that this money comes in from all sources. And in some dark money cases, those donors do not have to be identified. This lack of transparency is affecting our elections, and this electioneering becoming more important than what is left after, say, for example, the voting is over. That is completely ignored is also a problem. You see, politicos are very, very, and I'm not talking about Politico, the website. I'm talking about people who are part of the body politic. These people are very famously known for calling a particular state a battleground state. Well, what they don't care about is what the battleground looks like after the battle is fought. I've been to famous battlefields. The ground is irrevocably changed. The actual evidence of the battle is plain. When I went to Normandy, you could see bomb craters from a fight nearly a century ago. 70 years. And so when you look at all of this and you see this battleground state, remember that after the election is over, the battleground remains. There is going to be damage left in Ohio because of these people marching in, occupying the state, throwing money around, and then vanishing off where they came from. There are going to be people with hard feelings on both sides. Speaking of hard feelings, this is something that I'm also very interested in discussing with you. We see leftist political ideology being imposed on the people of the United States. And most of us, or many of us, find that to be mostly reprehensible. Because these particular issues, except in this case, these particular issues are not necessarily something that the voters would agree on. They're being imposed through electioneering or being imposed through judicial fiat. But what happens is that these leftist people have these ideas, like George Soros, I mentioned earlier. They have these ideas of the way things should be. And so they impose their will on the people through the processes which are legal. They impose their will by virtue of throwing money around. And so when we talk about the left, we go, ooh, that's terrible, blah, 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 blah. Well, this particular issue, ballot question 1, this was started by a Republican who has very strong moral values and is working to come up with some sort of way to inhibit the issue of abortion in his state. And so what he wanted to do is he wanted to make it necessary for a constitutional amendment to the state to pass with 60% of the vote instead of a simple majority. Now, there is a ballot question coming up in November that will add a right in the Constitution of the state of Ohio to an abortion. And I don't believe that that belongs in a constitution anywhere, but that's just my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with what the voters of Ohio think. But when you are someone in any political party and you seek to impose your ideology, you are doomed to failure. Now, this is being touted all over the country as a victory for abortion rights in the United States. As I've said, this particular issue is a personal one. That there is government involvement, that there is political involvement, is something that should be absolutely embarrassing to this entire nation. You know, we don't talk about other medical procedures. We don't talk about other decisions made medically between you and your doctor and so on and so forth in the public square, except for this one. Except for this one. And you're saying, well, you think that people just ought to be able to do whatever they want? No, that takes it the wrong direction. What I said and said yesterday was the solution to this problem is a law that determines when life begins, when human life begins. We don't have a law for that. We have a law for when life ends, but we don't have a law for when life begins. This requires a national debate. This requires a conversation between the people of the United States and agreement among we the people. And then an imposition on our representatives to enact it into law. Now, this is not a law that would be based on morality, although it depends on your point of view of what morality is. In my particular view, laws that are based on morality are touchstones of what end up being totalitarian societies. And we see some of that in this nation right now. But we need to have a legal definition of when life begins. That solves this entire issue. It solves the entire issue. And that ends it. Because after this particular point, whenever that is, legally now, not from a moral standpoint, because as soon as you start talking morality and you start talking about the horrifying hyperbole on both sides, what you end up with is a nonstop argument without a solution. This is about a solution. Laws determining when life ends revolve around someone's heart stopping. When your heart stops, you're legally dead. But is that actually the case? Artificial means can keep your blood circulating through your body, but your brain might be dead. Is that brain death? Is that death legally? No, it's not. But enough with this. The national migraine headache, the political football that this becomes when it is an acutely personal decision and it belongs in the personal space it's horrifying to me. It's just horrifying to me. In fact, we have laws that make it illegal to discuss personal medical information in the public square. And yet, this is nothing. This is something that it's part and parcel of the American life. And that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to me. But Republicans need to understand that when they impose their ideology, it's just as bad as when the left imposes its ideology. The people of the United States are the ultimate decision makers in this nation. And they should stay that way. And when you make some state a battleground, you need to remember what's left after the battle is fought. You need to be more responsible, better stewards of the society. And I'm looking forward to a day when that is also part of interactions in the public square, where we actually respect each other and believe that people should, by all rights, have the right to make their own decisions. This is The Wells Report. Back with more in a moment.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship.
Call 877-655-6870. That's 877-655-6870. 877-655-6870.
Good morning. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks for joining us. We are broadcasting for the first time today on Rumble. We're broadcasting live. Normally what we do is we put the show up after the broadcast is finished. And this time we found a way to do it live on Rumble. We've been saying that we're going to expand the reach of the Wells Report to various other platforms, more on the way. But we managed to get it done for Rumble today. And if you are watching on Rumble, welcome to the Wells Report. Good to have you here. We are still waiting for our first Rumble text or chat on our chat room. Should be right there. Check in, make a chat, say hello. And if you're new to the broadcast, I think you found a real newscast for yourself. Yeah, we report the news honestly and fairly. We do make commentary, but that's just opinion, and I make sure that you know the difference between the news and my opinion. We were just talking a little bit about dark money. Chris Grimes is a Democrat. He listens to this broadcast, and he said $4 million was given to support the Ohio initiative, which was turned aside by voters overwhelmingly. That $4 million was given by a single donor, Richard Uihlein, who is one of the country's most prolific patrons of right-wing causes. Now, I'm not trying to stop people from donating to their particular political cause. That's not what I'm trying to get done. Should there be a limit? Yeah. $4 million? Really? That being said, Chris points this out. This guy, Richard Uihlein, is from Illinois, an Illinois citizen meddling in Ohio politics. Is there a way to stop that? Should it be stopped? These are questions. Famous for asking questions. Famous for asking you what you think. 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. This is the Wells Report. This made me mad this morning. Remember that biolab just south of Fresno in California? It turns out that the people operating it were essentially run by a Chinese-backed company. Yeah. It was a black market lab. It was raided earlier this year. It was found to be making illegal COVID and pregnancy tests and storing disease-riddled mice and hundreds of samples of pathogens, all kinds of diseases, including SARS-CoV-2 and a bunch of other ones. I mean, everything from HIV to malaria and so on and so on. They had all of this in this lab in a derelict warehouse. Public records show the company linked to the lab, and this is the part that really got me mad, actually got government money to operate. This was from the COVID money backing program. It was a COVID-era loan program that the U.S. government had. And these people were doing biolab experiments in this warehouse using U.S. government money. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? You know what I think we're doing here? I think what we're doing is we're busy selling rope to people who are going to hang us with it one day. And I think that's ridiculous and stupid. Why are we playing around with these diseases? And I'm talking about the human condition. I'm not necessarily talking about the United States, which, by the way, has a history of funding biolabs. The Wuhan Institute of Virology being right on top of the list. And that was so egregious and that was so terrible that the people involved in funding it lied about it in front of Congress. And it's on the record. I'm not supposing anything. I'm not making any kind of assertion here. It's the news. What are we doing? What are we trying to do? Well, I mean, what are we going to do as we suffer from these diseases coming out of these laboratories? We're going to pat each other on the back and say, by golly, we came up with a great virus this time as we die from it? Seriously? It's not like human beings don't know what a crime against humanity is. We know what they are. Trying to come up with either a chemical that will kill people or a disease that will kill people, trying to come up with a way to make this particular virus more deadly is a crime against humanity. We ought to rekindle the Nuremberg trials, and these people ought to be dangling from a rope as they lose consciousness for the last time. I mean, I'm not trying to be some sort of, crazy, toxic, masculine, political commentator here. But that we continue to pursue these things that could lead to the demise of human beings, if that's not a crime against humanity, what is it? And what do we do with people who commit crimes against humanity? We remove them from humanity. What am I missing here? What am I missing? I mean, really? Hey, Bill. Yes, Stan? Hey, we've got tularemia here. We can turn that into a virus that'll kill 28% of the people that it infects. Hey, that's great. Let's go have a beer and a bat. Let's just sit around with our freshly broiled bat and have a beer and congratulate ourselves because we've come up with a disease that will kill our fellow human beings. Like I said, when I read this, I went, what? What do you mean? More taxpayer money to another biolab? This is the Wells Report. That's hour number 1. We've got another hour to go, and I want you to stay right there. Back in a moment.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now, you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.
Do you own a timeshare? At first, maybe it seemed like a great investment, but then you realized a lot of the promises made to you were simply not true. A little later, you started receiving the monthly maintenance fees and additional associated bills they failed to mention when you signed the agreement. And now their fees keep rising. Your times to actually use the timeshare keep shrinking, and the resort has no interest in letting you out of the agreement. Your vacation dream has turned into a timeshare nightmare, an overwhelming, never-ending financial obligation that will fall on your children after you're gone. And it seems as if there is no way out. Well, here's some great news. There is a way out. The Timeshare Exit Hotline has helped hundreds of people just like you, desperate people who thought they were stuck in this burden forever. Although most professionals in the timeshare industry are legitimate, there are those that use aggressive, sometimes even misleading sales tactics to try and trick innocent people into signing their lives away. We've heard many stories of people who have been lied to and others who were kept in a room for over 10 hours, not provided water or anything to eat, pressured until they were exhausted. These people finally signed a contract just to get out of there. If you're one of the unfortunate people who have been roped into a timeshare nightmare and feel there is no way out, call the number on your screen right now. When we take your case, it means we are highly confident that we can win. We'll provide you with an affordable, one-time fixed fee and our 100% client satisfaction guarantee. Now you don't have to face arrogant, aggressive salespeople alone. We're experts in consumer protection, real estate, and contract law. Even if they bullied you into an agreement, rest assured they're not going to bully us. So don't wait. Call us right now. Even if you've tried another company that failed you, call us. Our track record of successful negotiations speaks for itself. The call is free, the information is free, and there is absolutely no obligation. A single phone call could free you of this burden. So don't wait. Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline right now. If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. What do we do here? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. In other words, we de-propagandize the news. We make commentary, but that's not news. That's opinion. Yours and mine. And so we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate happens every day between 9 and 11 a.m. Central Daylight Time. And you can find us because what we try to do here is we try to give you a factual perspective on the news. Better facts mean better decisions. And the mainstream media just doesn't provide that for you. We do here. We do have some interesting news. We started broadcasting live on Rumble today. And if you happen to be watching on Rumble, welcome to the Wells Report. Glad you're here. Make sure that you check this out. And if you find value in it, by all means, please do share this broadcast with your friends on Rumble and the other platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Patreon. And let's build this show, because I think it's important that we have a place to go where somebody who believes in fact, honesty, fairness reports the news. The Supreme Court is reinstating a regulation aimed at reining in the proliferation of ghost guns. These are firearms without serial numbers that have been turning up at crime scenes around the nation. They say that they've been turning up in increasing numbers, but they don't tell you what those increasing numbers actually are. I suspect it's very, very small. The court voted 5-4 to put on hold a ruling from a federal judge right here in Texas that invalidated the Biden administration's regulation of ghost gun kits. Now, in case you don't know what a ghost gun is, ghost guns are weapons without serial numbers. Why you would want one, I have no idea. I don't have any idea. There are a lot of people that are very, very serious about Second Amendment protections. And why wouldn't they be? The Bill of Rights is very, very clear that infringement on the rights of the Bill of Rights that are enumerated there, those are not infringible. They are unalienable, in fact. Many people say that that word is inalienable. What does that mean? No, the framers of this nation use the word unalienable. In other words, you cannot put legislation against these rights. Why can't you put legislation against those rights? Because the government didn't give those rights to us. Those rights are given by God. And that is what the framers of this nation wanted to make very, very clear. The rights we have in this nation are not extended by the government. They're extended by God. These are human rights that are indeed unalienable. And there are people that believe the Second Amendment means you can do anything you want. And there's a big debate there. What I happen to believe is that I believe that the people of the United States should have the same kind of weaponry up to a point. I'm reasonable on this. Up to a point where the typical soldier, police officer, etc., where they would have the same sanctioned armament. In other words, if, say, for example, the police have access to an AR-15, so should the populace. And that's my basic center point. Do I believe that we all need to be able to rush off and have, say, for example, a 240B shotgun, or excuse me, machine gun? No, I don't believe so. I don't think that's necessary. But then again, that's just my personal opinion. There are people that say we ought to be able to get anything. I'm not exactly sure that's the case. Although this particular idea happened back in the 30s when a very famous crime group, Bonnie and Clyde, featured the fact that Clyde Barrow carried a BAR, a fully automatic 7.62 or 30 caliber machine gun. It was his weapon of choice. He sawed it off and he carried it with him everywhere he went. And so the Firearms Act did away with automatic firearms. Now that once again is it's open for debate. But then again, I spend an awful lot of time with firearms, and I never ever thought that automatic weaponry was anything except a way to burn excess amounts of ammunition. And I just don't see that as necessary. But again, that's just my opinion. But these ghost guns, why would you want one? Now, the vast majority of people that have firearms in their house don't care one way or another. And I'm talking well over 99% of us. None of us care because we have no real need to have what is, for all intents and purposes, an untraceable firearm. Now, you can certainly join us on the chat room or call me at 817-379-2172. And I'm not the be-all, end-all here. If you happen to be new to the broadcast, I am not the Oracle of Delphi. I don't have wisdom from the beyond. What I have is I'm just one of your neighbors. I'm just sharing what I believe. You can too. 817-379-2172. Or you can join us on the chat room, which is available on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, and Patreon. You can do all of that. Because I'd really like to know, I'd really like to have someone give me a genuine opinion on why ghost guns should be legal. I'm interested. I want those people to have their opportunity to explain it to the rest of us. But the Supreme Court has ruled on that. All right. So that's probably the most important news on that, except there's something else afoot. And this is something that also got my attention. And that is that there are people that are trying to change the Supreme Court. And they are trying to do so through the auspices of, putting a lien on the Supreme Court. In other words, trying to change through legislation what they can't change through what they can't change otherwise. In other words, they're trying to change the court. Many people use the court as an opportunity to legislate through other means, which is an abuse of the three-part system of government that we have, the separation of powers. But there are people here that are trying to besmirch the court, and they are trying to change the court because they don't like the decisions coming from the court, and they specifically focus on conservative justices. Let me share with you this report from Fox News, and it'll tell you what I'm talking about.
Pick your opponent in sports, but you can in politics. So Democrats are putting the Supreme Court on the ballot in 2024.
So we got 3 really bad Supreme Court rulings last week.
Liberals are incensed at a spate of recent high court rulings on affirmative action, gay rights, and student loan forgiveness. So they're running against the court. They're also citing the ethics of Supreme Court Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. Democrats demand hearings with justices testifying about their conduct.
If they refuse to come up, then I believe we should submit a subpoena in order to investigate. No person in the United States, no person should be above the law, including a Supreme Court justice, period.
Democrats are infuriated that a Republican Senate never granted current Attorney General Merrick Garland a hearing for the court in 2016. Yet Republicans rammed through the confirmation of Justice Amy Coney Barrett just before the election in 2020.
The Republicans have stolen 2 Supreme Court seats.
Democrats will look at the court and argue there are individuals that should not be on the court that are on the court, and we have to play hardball.
Democrats want to impose term limits for justices or add seats to dilute the power of conservative justices. Franklin Delano Roosevelt tried unsuccessfully to pack the court in the 1930s.
We have, therefore, reached the point as a nation where we must take action to save the Constitution from the court and the court from itself.
Republicans believe Democrats are just poor sports.
Instead of these packing the court or otherwise trying to change the court's composition, why don't you take these propositions to the American people and try to win the elections on them?
And even if Democrats can't alter the court, they hope this tactic energizes their base.
Yeah. So now what we have is this well-worn track of various political parties attempting to legislate through the judicial branch. And in the case of the current Supreme Court, there are conservative justices in the majority that turn aside a lot of this agenda. And these people are upset about it. And this also is we've been all focused on misinformation. And perhaps we could change Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's name to misinformation. She is talking about issuing a subpoena to get Supreme Court justices to appear in front of Congress. And then she says, no one is above the law, including the justices on the Supreme Court. In point of fact, The justices on the Supreme Court are the law. Who's going to rule on a subpoena to bring a Supreme Court justice to the Congress? The answer is no one. No one in the judicial branch, because of something called the separation of powers. The separation of powers in this government is truly what makes us free. Yes, the Bill of Rights declares what those rights are. As I've discussed, they are God-given, not government-given. But what truly makes us free is the separation of powers. The structure of a government that makes it really difficult to get anything done, because there are an awful lot of people that have to sign off of it, on it. And they are all beholden to the voters except for the justices on the Supreme Court. Now, there's a discussion there as to whether or not that should change. And the reason that there is a discussion is because there are times in the judiciary where judges do not rule on law, do not rule on the Constitution or Bill of Rights. They indeed rule on concepts of politics. If they want to be politicians, then they should be beholden to the public through an election. That's what we do here in Texas. All the state judges, including the Supreme Court of Texas, all of those justices and judges are elected by the people. Should that be the next thing for the Supreme Court? Again, there's no clear answer on this. There's a great argument on both sides. I happen to believe in the non-political judiciary, but only if the judiciary is actually non-political. We know it is. We know it's political because of the concept of judge shopping, where some particular group will bring a particular case in front of a particular judge because of a record of agreeing with the political imperative that brings the question in the first place. Again, that's an abuse of the judicial branch. It violates the separation of powers. And so I always get epically nervous when I see judges ruling on politics, up to and including the Supreme Court. Supreme Court just recently did it with congressional districts in Alabama. What are you doing? It's for the politicians to decide. It's for the voters to decide. This is the Wells Report. And by the way, going after Clarence Thomas and the other conservative justices as somehow criminalizing their behavior, that's reprehensible. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA. The only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship.
Call 877-655-6870. That's 877-655-6870. 877-655-6870.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now, you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.
This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We were talking a little bit. I was actually complaining about the fact that people are going after conservative justices on the Supreme Court. Here's a report about that from Laura Ingraham from Fox News.
Another day, another hit job on the most senior justice sitting on the Supreme Court of the United States, Clarence Thomas. Earlier today, ProPublica wrote a story with a provocative headline, Clarence Thomas and the Billionaire. So the crux of the controversy, well, that Justice Thomas didn't sufficiently disclose trips that a wealthy friend took him on. No, seriously, that's it. Now, as a friend of the show, Phil Kerpen, noted, the left-wing ProPublica was founded by Herb Sandler as a tax shelter for the billions he made on those toxic subprime mortgages that blew up the financial system. And he's mad that Clarence Thomas has a rich friend? Now, inevitably, the innocuous reveal led to hysteria from the leftist media.
A stunning new report from ProPublica alleges U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas may have repeatedly broken the law.
Is that unethical? Is it outside the rules for financial disclosure? Is it potentially illegal?
How unprecedented is this really?
It's unheard of at the Supreme Court. It comes as the Supreme Court right now is under this white-hot spotlight where more and more people are thinking that the court is becoming more political.
I don't think they were worried about it when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was trashing Trump. That was fine by them. Now, elected Democrats were equally as batty today. Senator Durbin demanded an enforceable code of conduct for justices, while Queen of the Know-Nothings, AOC, demanded his immediate impeachment. Sorry if we can't get worked up about a well-known public figure having a wealthy friend, especially given the decades-long grift campaign run by the sitting president and his family.
Ouch. That's Laura Ingraham from I believe, last night. So when we start talking about besmirching the justices, we start casting doubt on the Supreme Court of the United States. That's un-American, and we need to stop it. Now, have Supreme Court justices been impeached in the past? Yes, for serious crimes, high crimes and misdemeanors, no less. Bribery, I believe it was. That being said, what we don't have is we don't have Clarence Thomas or any of the other conservative justices being bribed. And there are other justices who enjoy the company of rich people. Clarence Thomas is in trouble lately because he's a friend, or at least an acquaintance of, Jerry Jones, who's the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, Jerry Jones gifted Clarence Thomas a Super Bowl ring. And apparently that's over the line. Well, sorry, it's not. The only people that have a code of integrity, a code of conduct for the Supreme Court of the United States is the Supreme Court of the United States. They are the law. And we need to back off and let them do their job. Now, did I say that very same thing when, say, for example, there were Democrat-appointed jobs on the Supreme Court in the majority? I certainly did. It's the court. There are certain things that are immutable, and this is one of them. And by the way, while we're talking about people who shouldn't be on the Supreme Court, and the idea the Spectre brought up in that first report that I played, that Merrick Garland should have gotten a confirmation hearing, he's now the Attorney General of the United States. Based on his conduct in that office, just exactly how would you describe what would have been Justice Merrick Garland? Would he have been a justice arbitrating the Constitution? Or would he have been a politician, a sure vote for the left when they brought their issues before the Supreme Court in an attempt to override legislation? I'm just asking the question. What's the answer? You have it. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You are watching The Wells Report, more of which continues next.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship.
Call 877-655-6870. That's 877-655-6870. 877-655-6870.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost.
News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Hi. Welcome to the broadcast. This is Wednesday, August 9th, year of our Lord 2023. It is hump day, so happy humping. There was something that something came up in the conversation regarding Clarence Thomas and the rest of this idea that the Supreme Court needs to be changed. And one of the comments was from the chat room. Poker Monkey is his handle, but Poker said leftist judges don't rule on law. If so, all of the charges against President Trump would very likely be set aside. Well, that being said, okay, I understand all that. But what I want to also bring up is this, is that indeed, hang on a second here. I got to do something. Today is curveball day, in case you're wondering. My computers, from time to time, like most computers do, decide to change their mind for whatever reason. And in this case, this one changed its mind. And so let me do this real fast, because I want to talk a little bit about something the president did the other day. And that was indeed, he decided what he was going to do. He hasn't actually done it yet. But what his plan is to designate the Grand Canyon as a national monument. It's already a national park, but it's not the Grand Canyon that he's talking about. What he's talking about is the 1,000,000 acres around it that he's talking about. It may be square miles, but like I said, I got this curveball. Let me see if I can get this. I have subscriptions to the New York Times, for example, and for whatever reason, I normally just go to it But this time the particular website absolutely insists that I re-sign, and that's something that these are curveballs that you can't really do anything about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the NPR article. The new national monument in Arizona that President Biden is announcing is primarily, they say, it's primarily aimed at protecting Native American sacred sites. It is 1 million acres, not 1 million square miles, but it is federally owned land. And this, according to NPR, is, quote, a reflection of his administration prioritizing goals of America's indigenous peoples. There's only one tribe that actually lives inside the Grand Canyon, the Havasupai. They have been among the most outspoken of the more than a dozen tribes in the area who have cultural and historic ties to the canyon. They've been pushing for land protection for decades and banded together formally after President Obama issued a 20-year hold on new uranium mines in 2012. Obviously, that is about to expire. And so President Biden, in an effort to make it impossible to harvest America's energy, has decided to turn this into a national monument to keep this uranium that's available on this acreage under the control of the government of the United States. They're using indigenous peoples as an opportunity to say these are sacred sites and we have to protect them. Okay. What the American government has done since we've been a country regarding Native Americans, indigenous peoples, has been reprehensible. There have been treaties that are signed with great ceremony between the tribes and the American government that are immediately set aside for the sake of, gold being discovered on the land, etc. And so the treaties are set aside and just rendered as ridiculous. If I ever have a chance to do something about that, if, say, for example, I was the president of the United States, what I'd do is I'd form a presidential commission to find out which of those treaties can be reinstated without damaging the United States of America and to the benefit of indigenous peoples. Because a government that makes a promise that creates a treaty between anyone that they do business with, and then an American government that will set aside that for reasons of politics or reasons of wealth and riches, etc., is criminal in my view. And these people have been victimized by this government, and it's time for that to be made good, in my view. When it comes to uranium on this 1 million acres of sacred land, I become somewhat narrow-minded. Okay, first of all, what has happened in the last 20 years is we have seen American uranium production severely curtailed, up to and including deals that made American harvesting of its own uranium a business concern of offshore entities, including our enemies. Rosatom is the national company that handles uranium for Russia. And Rosatom has pretty much free reign to harvest whatever uranium they can from the United States of America. How that happened, I have no idea. It's an incredibly rich element that belongs to we the people. To somehow send that off to another country, one that is adversarial to us, is, epic misconduct leaps to my mind when we say that. Further, there's another little narrow-minded problem I have. It's 2023. Okay? This nation's been around for 247 years, and we have seen amazing, and I mean amazing, advances in technology through the auspices of the free society in which we live based on a capitalist endeavor. There is no reason, under any circumstances whatsoever, that uranium on these sacred lands can't be harvested with no one knowing that it's happening. There are ways to be able to do this. You don't have to create a gigantic strip mine and destroy the land and then promise that you're going to fix it in 100 years. You don't have to do that. There are ways to do this so that it actually works for everyone, which means this. How about if you go ahead and allow leases on this land that contain uranium? Tell the people harvesting it that what they must do is they must do so in a way that absolutely protects this land. In other words, do it in a way that's not visible, in some way to harvest this stuff. And you're saying, how do you do it when it's invisible? Well, what I would suggest is that you would build structures that more resemble, say, for example, rocks to cover up the actual buildings around a mine. You can do this. It doesn't cost that much. And besides, when you're harvesting uranium, you're going to make a whole lot of money. And so you can do it without it becoming an eyesore. And so they should. There's also something else. If this is Indian land, then a deal should be struck so that the actual indigenous people profit from the harvesting of uranium on their land. I'm pretty sure that if that was the case, the Indians, the indigenous people would play ball. That's what I believe would happen. And that it doesn't happen is, once again, part and parcel of this ability, this want to, for whatever reason, keep screwing over indigenous peoples in the United States. Now, there are some other things, too, that we have to keep in mind. Yes, uranium is what's called fissile material. It gives off heavy particles that can be used to create a chain reaction, which creates energy release, which creates normally in the form of heat, which can be used to generate other forms of energy. We've known that for a very, very long time. But that's not the only use for this stuff. For example, uranium is very, very dense. It's very dense. And when the radioactivity of uranium begins to wane, in other words, it depletes, you can use that very dense material for other things. For example, you can make it into armor for a tank. You can make it into weaponry to take out a tank that's based on steel. Because depleted uranium, which is fired by the A-10 in that gun that it has, it's a tank-busting close air support weapon. It's a weapon system. That'll go right through steel. It'll absolutely go right through steel. The armor that we have on Abrams tanks in the United States, made in the United States, also features some of that and will deflect a weapon that shoots depleted uranium slugs. It will defeat that. Well, that's kind of handy to have if you happen to be somebody that realizes the military value of a tank. And to take this out of the mix, and to do so cynically by saying we're protecting the historic and sacred lands of indigenous people, when what you're doing is you're trying to remove a source of wealth, both from the indigenous people and the people of the United States. This is, after all, our land, and what is on our land is ours. It doesn't belong to the government. The government doing this massive land grab under the auspices of the magnificence, the absolute magnificence of the Grand Canyon, is cynical. That's not what's going on here. What's going on here is this is a governmental power grab. Now, here's the President of the United States discussing this yesterday. Check this out.
Folks, it's not hyperbole to suggest that there's no national treasure, none that is grander than the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon, one of the Earth's 9 wonders of the world. Literally. Think of that. It's amazing. Enduring symbol of America to the entire world. The first time I saw the Grand Canyon years ago, I was a young senator, as I stood there and looked out, a phrase came to mind. It was instinctive. I said, this is God's cathedral. That's what it reminded me of. It just is so magnificent. As a matter of fact, I said 9. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Yeah. This gives us a couple of things to discuss. Thing number 1, the president is listening to somebody talking to him on an earpiece. Fortunately, he's getting better at it, because when he said there were 9 wonders of the world, somebody in the background said, Mr. President, 7 wonders. 7 wonders of the world. And he corrected himself. Then the idea that the president of the United States has to explain the Grand Canyon as this amazing cathedral of God is a contributor to the cynicism I'm talking about. We know exactly what the president is doing. He is controlling, through the auspices of the federal government, national wealth. And it's an energy source. And so the government of the United States is seeking to control American energy. Why? Well, for a bunch of reasons. One of the things that you need for a totalitarian government is to control a few things. They're basic. One is energy. Another is healthcare. A third is food. 4 is shelter. So if the government of the United States decides, for whatever reason, to control all the energy, control all the food, control all the medical care, and control all the housing in the United States, then what you have is you have a way for the government of the United States to, shall we say, oppress the people. And that's what's going on here. That's what Obamacare was all about. There was no need for an overarching government healthcare system. The healthcare system was doing fine. It was based on earnings. And maybe people can say, well, yeah, that's the problem. It's all for profit, and that's the issue. No, that's not the issue. The issue is control of healthcare in the United States, along with energy, along with food production, along with shelter. And so when I saw illegal immigrants being housed in now government-owned hotels, I sat there and went, huh, that's interesting. It's all right here in front of us. And if somebody dares to put it together, they say, my God, he's a conspiracy theorist. No, not a conspiracy theorist. A student of history. A student of political abuse. That's not conspiracy. That's the news. And that's what you find here on the Wells Report. By the way, did I mention this is a nonpartisan broadcast? You know it absolutely is. I am basing everything on American, not necessarily Republican or Democrat. More about that in a minute. This is the Wells Report.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare or private insurance, you can see if you qualify for a CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you use insulin daily, you might be eligible to get your own continuous glucose monitor. So call the US Med Diabetic Health Hotline to see if you qualify for a CGM at little to no out-of-pocket cost. Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship.
Call 877-655-6870. That's 877-655-6870. 877-655-6870.
This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I want to thank the people watching us for the first time live on Rumble. Pepper just gave us a chat. Unfortunately, it didn't make it to the chat that I can see, but we did get a response from Pepper. Pepper, thank you very much for joining us. I certainly hope you enjoy the Wells Report live on Rumble. We'll be doing that as a matter of course, just as we do on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Also, Patreon, we'll be putting this up after the broadcast so you can see it at your leisure. So anyway, thanks much. Gary, I haven't gotten there yet, but I will. That one did come through, and thank you very much, my friend. Thanks for supporting the Wells Report. So, nothing is more fun than fishing. For most people. I'm not much of a fisherman, because I don't eat a lot of fish. There's some fish I will eat. There is. Like, for example, tilapia. You know, we have tilapia meals from time to time, especially during Lent, because we live in a Catholic household, and so Fridays is important. And so I don't eat a lot of fish, but I do like fishing. I do enjoy it, but I just throw them back. It doesn't make any difference how big they are, how small they are, whatever. I just throw all the fish back because that's what I do. But there are times when you just want the good eating of, say, for example, a black bass or some kind of delicious food fish. Trout is good. So is salmon. Yum. However, I'd rather just toss them back in because, hey, you know, the fun for me is actually catching a fish and then letting it go. But like I said, there are times when you just don't want to throw back what you catch. And that happened with Tampa Mayor Jane Castor. Well, she made quite a catch. She was fishing in the Florida Keys with her family. And then what ended up happening is that she reeled in 70 pounds of cocaine. 70 pounds of cocaine. You want to know exactly how that came down? Well, watch this.
The mayor of Tampa went to the Florida Keys for a family fishing trip, and she reeled in a whole lot more than she bargained for. Mayor Jane Castor says she and her family hauled in 70 pounds of cocaine. The family contacted the local sheriff's office, and Border Patrol took the drugs, which are worth more than $1 million.
My younger brother saw some debris in the water, and so we went over there because quite often if you fish, the smaller fish will go under any kind of shade that they can get, and then that attracts a larger fish like triple tail. I thought it was shade as opposed to something shady, right? But, you know, the closer we got, and once I saw the rip in it and you could see the tightly wrapped packages, I was like, oh, that's definitely a bale of cocaine.
Right, so this isn't Castor's first time bringing in evidence. She spent 31 years working for the Tampa Police Department. By the way, she was the police chief there for many years before running for mayor.
Yeah. Just got a chat from Gary. He says Hunter must have dropped it. Okay, that's mean-spirited. It is. But did you happen to notice that she was talking about how fish like to gather under, say, for example, an object and for the shade? And she said, well, I didn't think it was going to be shady. Yeah. Anyway, so she reels in 70 pounds of cocaine floating in the waters off of Tampa. Well, there you go. Now, there is a problem with this story. And I'm surprised that some enterprising leftist media figure hasn't found it yet. Because, as we know, in order to successfully fish, there are things you have to have. You have to have lures. You have to have a fishing rod. You have to have fishing line. You have to have a boat in some cases. Sometimes you can stand on the side of the shore and fish that way. But what no leftist media member, no leftist journalist has even bothered to ask is that, yes, the mayor of Tampa caught cocaine while fishing. What bait did she use? What was the bait? You got to have bait. Was it an illegal immigrant? Did she use an illegal immigrant as bait to catch this cocaine? This is something that someone needs to immediately investigate. That's my thought. Let's see. Alicia asks, did they return the cocaine to its rightful owner? Well, finders keepers and all that. Yeah, so there's the situation. Let's see. These days, you immediately suspect the person who found it. Well, fortunately, like was reported here just moments ago, fortunately, the mayor of Tampa is a former police officer, so you don't suspect the actual mayor of Tampa, except, of course, for trying to figure out what bait she was using. This has been the Wells Report. We do this every single day, Monday through Friday, from 9 until 11 a.m. Central Time. If you are watching on Rumble, thanks. This is our first foray into live broadcast on that platform. Make sure if you have something you want to say to me, send me an email, thewellsreport@frontier.com, and make sure in the subject line you put Rumble so I know it's you. Do it in all caps. That way it'll show up. The executive producer of the Wells Report is Dirk Steele. The associate producer and publicist of this broadcast is Jube Dankworth. You can find her at netmediaconsultants.com. I'm John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us today. And make sure you set your clocks and your computers to watch us again tomorrow. Another edition of the Wells Report. Take care. All righty. Thanks very much. By the way, those people that happen to live nearby, Pierce, Thompson, Wells, and Lopez. That's my new band. I'm going to be playing with those guys at the usual spot. Watch your Facebook post, and I will tell you all about that coming up. So make your plans tomorrow night at that place that we love so much. All right? And I'll have more about that for you in a little bit. Until tomorrow, God bless you and all like you, and I will see you then for